Story 1. My husband, who is German, gets shocked every time we go to the United States when we drive through a suburb and very few houses have fences or bushes around their homes. He always comments on the lack, saying, "Everything is so open. I do not understand why no one has hedges." Story 2. My partner lived in London. Whenever he would visit, the garbage disposal would freak him out. He would flip the switch to see what it would do and then jump back when it turned on. Also, he was horrified that I did not own a kettle. Story 3. When I lived in the United States in the 1980s and 1990s, I was a flight attendant. I found it funny at first that you could fly 6 hours across one country, through many time zones without needing to exchange currency, and the language would remain the same. That was long before the euro. When you traveled a few hours by car, you would be in another European country with a different currency and language, and at the border, you had to show your identification. Story 4. I think one of the things I see on Reddit is how most non-Americans and even some Americans don't realize how absolutely tiered our healthcare system truly is. There is no safety net for basic healthcare, but also some really amazing out-of-this-world care and coverage in some cases. It's completely dependent upon where you work, which is very different from other countries. For my first child, my wife and I paid nothing for the entire duration of her pregnancy and labor. Her health care at the time covered pregnancy to its fullest. Her monthly premiums were maybe around $100 at the time. For my second child, she changed jobs and joined my insurance. We were paying $120 a month in premiums for the whole family, and the pregnancy and labor cost us probably $500 to $600 at most. Currently, at yet another job, we are paying closer to $700 a month for the whole family. Recently, one of my children had a really bad infection that required us to go into the emergency room, get rushed to the local children's hospital, and stay there for a week and a half with some intense medication and a small procedure. It ended up costing us $1,200 for the whole thing. I have friends who pay $1,200 to $1,300 a month for their premiums, and their plan covers just about nothing. If they have a serious health incident like the one my daughter went through, they would be tens of thousands in debt overnight. It's absolutely a tiered system in the United States when it comes to basic health care. And because it is tied to your employment, it's one of the reasons some people might not leave jobs for a long time. Coverage is different from business to business. Story 5. The United States is big. Texas is the size of France. North Carolina is bigger than England. It's 1,900 miles from Paris to Moscow. If you start at New York City, 1,900 will get you just past Denver. Story 6. The absolute emptiness of wilderness areas. We were on a week-long hike and ran into a Frenchman hiking the other way who had been living on a packet of soybeans for the 3 days since he began his hike. Based on his European hiking experiences, he had planned to buy food when passing through villages or by farms throughout each day. He was like, "Where are the farmers? Where are the sheep? Where are the villages?" We let him know that in the United States, when the trails ran through wilderness, national parks, national forests, or even state parks, there was nothing there. He could go days without coming across civilization. We fed him a good meal and gave him enough supplies to get him the few days to the next place to get supplies, so it turned out okay for him. He simply couldn't comprehend the vast emptiness of it all. Story 7. Grocery purchasing is so different. I told my German friend that I probably have 3 to 4 weeks of food on hand all the time. He asked because of a storm. He thought that was crazy and asked where I stored it. I then described a pantry and a deep freezer, and he was dumbfounded. But these things are super common in the United States outside of cities like New York. Story 8. You can have your employment terminated at any time, for almost any or no reason, without notice, without compensation, and full loss of healthcare. It is called at-will employment. There are precious few protections or exceptions to this, and many times, those laws are blatantly ignored even if they are violated. If you do not like it, sue me. And then begins a 3 to 10-year ordeal that may not yield any results. Story 9. Begging strangers for healthcare. The entire premise of Breaking Bad is based on Walt and his two-income family not being able to afford his medical treatment, and later in the series Walt's brother-in-law Hank, a federal agent, is attacked and severely injured, and Walt pays for his extensive physical therapy that his government job's insurance was denying him. American audiences considered this a reasonable depiction. Story 10. As a European, the amount of time spent in cars that you are okay with can be surprising. For some people, it's literally more than 3 hours per day. I can't fathom how that's okay for some people. No hate, I just don't get it. Story 11. The amount of prisoners in the United States compared to the total population. Story 12. 1. Air conditioning in homes. 2. Flying for 6 hours and never leaving the mainland part of the country. 3. Going on 10-plus-hour road trips. 4. Our national parks being truly wild and harming people who don't respect them. Story 13. As an Australian, I thought the toilet was going to overflow when I flushed it, and power outlets had no on switch. Light switches were off for on and on for off. Also, how many accents I heard. Story 14. The contradiction between thinking the United States is the best country ever and that everybody wants to move there, associating themselves so strongly with countries they've never been to because they have ancestors from there. Story 15. They will let you die to protect medical industry profits. In Europe, ambulances, hospitals, and doctors are a public service. When I needed to see a doctor in England, I just walked in and asked to see one. They got me in even though I was 240 miles from home, and I left with a prescription and a letter for my doctor to update his records. No bill. The very idea of a medical bill for seeing a doctor is foreign. I used to think it was a mistake in American television and movies. Story 16. Healthcare. It amazes me how a first world state can't give a damn about the health of their people. Just can't imagine having to think about calling an ambulance when in need because of the troubles that could bring to the family financially. Story 17. So many good answers and contradictions. To me, the United States is crazy, but I really like your bar culture. Once you're finally old enough to go in, people go to bars to chat with random people and not just to try and sleaze and pick up. It was refreshing. I had so many great chats. Story 18. Generally, all the waste and lack of consciousness or care about the resulting impact on resources and the environment. Air conditioning huge rooms when nobody is home. Oversized vehicles for a single passenger. Lawn watering. Mega-sized everything. Hyper-consumption of stuff. Specifically, those public toilet doors that allow the world to see you using the restroom. Story 19. To begin with, the fixation on the nation of origin of the ancestors and the simultaneous total lack of desire to integrate. For example, often saying at random that they are Italian, things like, today is Monday, I know because I'm Italian American, or other nationalities, and at the same time not even taking the time to learn the language of that nation that the American supposedly adores and therefore discovering that certain traditions in Italy or elsewhere do not exist. It's fine if you are of Italian, Irish, or other origin, but it's not something miraculous like having telepathy or the ability to fly. In the whole world, there will be 1 billion people of partial or total European origin. The total inability of some to accept that their opinions can be wrong. There is, for example, a strong belief that we Italians hate Italian Americans and the iron will to impose their will on people of other nations. For example, I caught someone who wanted to order me to accept Italian Americans as brothers and sisters, because we Italians are known for brotherly love. The belief that freedom of speech never implies responsibility for what is said. Sometimes it seems that in the United States, it is possible to say between neighbors, "Excuse me, could I rape your minor daughter?" The fixation on details of absolutely zero importance, for example, those who discuss the different way of writing some words in British and American English or of formulating dates, or the controversies on what is better between Fahrenheit or Celsius. Story 20. Man, I'll never forget the first time I saw an American advertisement for, I think it was an antidepressant. I heard the end of the advertisement say, may cause compulsive gambling. What? Story 21. I did a student exchange in the United States. The biggest surprise for me was tipping for everything. Why can't you all just include the tip in the price and pay people properly? Tipping should be when someone goes above and beyond. They give great food or wine recommendations, service is quick, etc. Anyway, I knew about tipping at restaurants, but for my haircut, tax not included. Why do I need to mentally calculate what the actual price will be? I can kind of understand it for shopping online because I know it differs from state to state, again, why? But hungover in McDonald's, I really don't want to mentally be adding 10% in my head. I swear there needs to be a cheat sheet for those who move their handed out to them at the airport. This is a more generic one, but for some people, just their lack of knowledge of anything outside America. I know it's a generalization, but some of you have really missed out on basic geography education. Took me ages to get my head around Fahrenheit. I ended up just screenshotting a basic conversion chart and knew roughly what conversions were after approximately 3 months there. Story 22. Medical bills bankruptcy. United States dentists are nice and kind. Having to do or pay taxes versus just having everything taken out. No or few paid vacation days. Clothes dryers. How large the United States is, how big everything is, such as homes, washing machines, cars, and portions. Story 23. Churches. Every little town in the South seems to have as many churches as houses. People like to show and tell how super religious they are. Also, the United States version of Christianity is weird, so much focus on end times and Old Testament horror. Story 24. I just saw a post 5 minutes ago where someone used a bullet on a cat for scale. Based on that, I am going to say using a bullet for scale, believing everyone can work with that. Story 25. Financial ruin due to medical debt. People delaying and not seeking care due to fear of cost. I was in a car accident and declined an ambulance ride due to cost fears. One emergency room visit 5 years ago cost me $3,700. And I have good insurance. Luckily, I was fine both times. Story 26. That we don't care about soccer. Every other country in the world goes crazy over the World Cup. Most Americans couldn't tell you what country it's being held in, even if it was in America. Nobody gives a shit. Story 27. Of those that haven't been mentioned. Buying food, home goods, furniture, toiletries, lawn care or gardening supplies, sporting goods, craft items, and electronics all under one roof with one checkout line. Unless you want alcohol, in which case it varies wildly based on location. Water level in toilets. Yellow school buses really are that common. No one cares what you're wearing. Story 28. Obese people driving these three-wheel scooters. Obese people eating fast food. Tipping. Just include it in the price already. Air conditioning everywhere. Jaywalking. In Europe, pedestrians have the right of way. Story 29. Wild animals that can kill you. In Europe, predators capable of doing a person harm have for the most part been wiped out. But taking a walk through wilderness or just rural areas in the United States could lead to a confrontation with a rattlesnake, alligator, bear, mountain lion, or a pack of wolves. Australians handle it just fine though. Story 30. I was at Cabela's yesterday in Wisconsin and saw a Civil War revolver from 1864 sitting next to a 60-pound bag of beef jerky. Born and raised in the good old United States of America, but that just made me appreciate how zany this place can be. Story 31. Public water drinking fountains. Americans with Disabilities Act compliant buildings and cities. At least when I lived in Europe in the late 1990s, those were the things I remember being conspicuously absent. Story 32. Driving across the United States is like driving across several European countries. For that matter, driving across some states can take longer than driving through some European countries. Story 33. Lemonade. Basically, anywhere you can get a fountain drink, you can get lemonade in the United States. Went to Germany, including Oktoberfest, with a friend who doesn't drink beer or soda. She ordered a lemonade and got Sprite or lemon lime soda. Story 34. Tipping and taxes. Every time I go to the United States, I have to calculate taxes before I buy anything in the stores. And tipping, how would I know how much I should tip if the food is okay? When they swipe my card after I get some food and then write how much I want to tip afterwards, it means they could alter how much they take from my card afterwards. That doesn't seem too safe. This has influenced how often I go to the United States. My work has some customers there, and sometimes I just say that I can't go when they ask me. First, all that confusion, and second, why would I want to sit on a plane for 8 hours? Story 35. how incredibly splintered and biased common information sources are. It seems like the news is 90% opinion pieces of what is happening, predigesting the information for the viewers, and the rest may contain some actual information the viewer could form their own opinion on. Story 36. Siesta, which is mostly a European tradition, is something I wish we could have here in the United States. Here in the United States of America, we have working lunches where we sit and eat lunch while working. Breaks have become an illusion for me lately. Story 37. Advertisements for prescription drugs appear during every commercial break. Most of them have side effects that are exactly the same as the issues they supposedly are meant to help. The commercials always end with, "Ask your doctor if depression medicine that causes depression and suicidal thoughts is right for you." Story 38. Well, in the United States, it's normal to drink coffee the size of a bucket, while in Europe, they'll give you a cup that holds 2 sips. And in the United States, you can start a conversation with a stranger in an elevator, but in Europe, they'll look at you like you're a maniac. Story 39. How big it is. I had a friend from Denmark who was coming to visit California and also wanted to just pop over to visit me in Southeast Texas. And I'm like, my friend, I can drive for 10 hours in one direction and still be in the same state. This quick trip you're talking about is a 20-hour drive straight through. They also seem to have no concept of how spread out our cities, at least the ones not on the East Coast, are. I live just north of Houston, and it's a 2.5-hour drive to Galveston, which is the southeast side. It's all city between here and there, though there is some green here and there,